We're on the Maroochy River on the North Arm, right up behind Yandina. This morning we got in at the Rudley Bridge in Nindri Road, aka George Best Park. It's a little bit of a steep boat ramp into the water there, and it's quite slippery as well, but it's a really good spot to get in. Around these parts the river's actually quite quiet, quite narrow, very slow flowing, so it's a really lovely spot. The only downside is that it's right next to the New Bruce Highway, so there's a lot of noise from the traffic there. But yeah, if you're paddling in summer, it's quite good because there's a lot of shade from the camphor laurel trees. It's very Middle Earth through here. It's really, really beautiful. I've factored in the tide times up this far of the river. It never seems to really affect paddling very much in my experience. However, I've looked at where the high tide is at Colston Wharf, which is on the Coolum Road in Yandina. And that was 10:30 this morning, so we've gotten in I think maybe about 11 this morning. It's still about 5 kilometres I think down to Colston Wharf launch. However, it's not made too big an impact on the paddling, so the river's not that strong that with the tide coming in it's going to be hard work. So yeah, we're going to go down to Dunthan Rock today and probably take a good couple of hours. It's quite a nice sunny winter's day here on the Sunshine Coast, a bit chillier than what I'm used to in the Pilbara, but the water's quite cold. With PFD on it, it certainly keeps you a lot warmer. Other thing I was going to mention is that you don't really want to get in at George Best Park when the tide's low, because it's actually really quite shallow there. And that's the good thing about being on paddleboard, because you're so high up you can actually see through the murky water and actually see the bottom of the water. If it was low tide, you'd probably hit the bottom quite a lot more getting through the first kilometre or two. I mean, even here down behind the ginger factory here, it's still, you know, I'm still seeing spots where you can see the bottom. It's a really good area of the coast to explore, and this particular part of the river, like I said, is nice and quiet. After we get to the North Arm and the South Arm junction just after Yandina, yeah, a little bit more traffic, but yeah, this is, as far as river traffic, this is quite nice and quiet up here, especially seeing it's a weekday. Now that Paddling Megan has stopped talking, I'll tell you a little bit more about the trail. Starting in the North Arm of the Maroochy River behind the town of Yandina at the George Best Park, the trail runs south before joining the South Arm and turning east until it gets to Coolum. From here it turns south through Bly Bly and finally one last turn east until it gets to the ocean. The trail runs for approximately 37 kilometres through acreage properties, farms and conservation areas. As the trail gets closer to the coast, the surrounding area becomes more developed, ending in the popular beachside area of Cotton Tree, where you can find everything from hotel accommodation to camping and a bustling collection of restaurants, cafes and boutique shops. I'm going to be paddleboarding the quieter portion of the trail down to the Coolum Creek landing. Just behind me here you can see a private jetty leading up into someone's land. So these are not for public use. We've got certain launch spots along the river. The council website's got a list of all the launch places, the distances between launch places and how long the expected paddle time is. So yeah, they ask you not to use other people's jetties. So just be aware that they're around. But yeah, there's plenty of places to get in and out. So yeah, it just takes a bit of planning. So how would you be if you lived on the river, hey? Gorgeous. Not sure if you can see that little box crate up in the tree there. It's probably an indication of just how high the water was when we had the flood last year, last May I think it was. Yeah, one of the biggest floods had in a long time. So yeah, I'd say probably went up 5-6 metres or probably even more. Just before reaching the Coolum Bridge, I noticed a couple of people camping in some pretty beautiful spots. Since recording this, I discovered that there are occasionally a couple of properties in the area listed on HipCamp that back onto the river. So if you're wanting a tranquil paddleboarding campsite, I'd recommend checking out the HipCamp website and searching the area just west of Yandina. The region we're paddleboarding through at the moment fronts onto Collins Road, and there is sometimes another camp on the other side of Coolum Bridge where the North and South Arm meet. This is of course subject to change, so check out the website for your preferred dates. This guy over here just trying to see whether or not he should fly off. We've reached the point where the North Arm and the South Arm of the Maroochy River meet. It's just not far down from the Coolum Road Bridge. So the North Arm is where we've come from. I imagine you could go up the South Arm a little bit to explore up there, but I don't think you'll get very far before you start to see quite a lot of shallow areas, lots of rocks and things like that. As if anyone's aware of the area, just coming past the Andina Caravan Park there, while it can have some deep spots, I think there's more rock than anything else, so I'm not actually going to go up there today. Worth checking out though if you've got the time, but I would say the best part of the paddle would be to continue down to Dunothan Rock. Definitely enough water down there and deep enough. There's one spot though, I did touch bottom on this rocky outcrop. I think it's behind a property called The Rocks, worth keeping an eye out for that. I will do a bit of research. Hopefully I won't hit it today. I'm going to keep a good eye out for it and yeah, just let you know where that is. But this part of the river is where it's a little bit more common to see people in motorboats. Just look out for them. I don't think there's a lot, but we did see one or two last time we were in this part. So yeah, keep to the sides and you should be right. These are the rocks I was talking about. Last time we came up, probably the tide was about high tide, I imagine, because you couldn't see any of these at all. So I think we're probably about 2 hours after high tide at the moment. New moon was yesterday, so that means that the high tides are going to be higher, low tides are going to be lower as well. I'm actually about to tip my fin on one just under here. So someone has actually marked out where these rocks are, which is really great. So if you can, if you're in this area, just keep an eye out for them. Look out for this function venue. It doesn't look like it's being used at the moment, but also in front of us here we have this little hill with a monument on it, which is quite distinctive in these parts. Check this out. How's this for the ultimate sup house? Behind me is Ashton's Wharf. It's another good spot to get in for the upper reaches of the Maroochy River. It's the best spot to get in between the Coolum Road Bridge at Colson's Wharf and Dunothan Rock. So as you can see, the ramp itself is actually quite good compared to what we've seen so far. So Radley Bridge, aka George Best Park, and Colson Wharf are a lot more difficult to get into. So this is a good spot to get in if accessibility is a bit more of a challenge for you. We've also got Lake Dunothan just around the corner, which also has pretty good access. Again, most of these are a bit slippery. I would still say that this is probably the best one for this top 10 k's or so of the river. So we've arrived at the Dunothan Rock Road boat ramp. Our lunch isn't here yet, so we're just going for a little paddle into Lake Dunothan. And yeah, really surprised just how shallow it is coming through past the boat ramp there. Sometimes the water's like that. Well, even here, 2 foot deep. I mean, mud on my paddle there. If you're coming in for a nice little day paddle, Lake Dunothan is a good place to come. It's pretty sheltered. Got a nice little pontoon here. You can also use the ramp. There's a little picnic area as well with bathrooms over the road if you need facilities. And yeah, I would just make sure that you come in when there's probably more towards the high tide, just because of how shallow it is. I don't think you'd get stuck. I don't think it gets quite that low. So yeah, if you want to know more about Lake Dunothan, you can check out our video on paddleboarding Lake Dunothan. It's not really a lake, it's just like a little inlet from the Maroochy River at Dunothan. But yeah, it's a nice little spot and not too far from Maroochydore if you just want a wee trip out for the day if you're staying around those parts. Thanks for joining me on part 1 of the Maroochy River Canoe Trail. I'll link the video for part 2 here when it's uploaded. Meanwhile, check out these other locations I think you'll really love.